So, let's see what's up.
What?
Let's see what's up.
What's your
So, similar ideas versus different ideas, right? So, if we are trying to express similar ideas,
yeah?
you should not use nevertheless. You should not use but. You should not use however.
Oh.
Okay? And if you want to express different ideas, don't use any of these. Okay?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Do not.
Yeah.
Do not. Be very careful.
Yeah.
Let's do a question here. Conditions in the interior of Antarctica are inhospitable. Sorry, that's a hard word.
Yeah.
Inhospitable to many forms of life. That means no one can live there. Why? Because they have sub-zero temperatures, high winds, and also extreme dryness, all of which make it impossible for most animals to survive. Blank, the Antarctic Peninsula and the surrounding islands have relatively mild temperatures and liquid water, allowing many species to thrive there. What do you think is happening here? We're talking about an area that's going to be inhospitable to many forms of life,
Yeah.
versus an area that allows many species to thrive. Are we discussing similar ideas or contrasting ideas? Different or contrasting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should use
However.
but we don't have however in the
yeah,
choices. So
Uh-huh.
we'll go with in contrast. Okay. Let's talk about those words. Alternatively, conversely, meanwhile, nevertheless, nonetheless, rather, however, in contrast, still, yet, even so, despite this. All of these words, or also called transitions, are used to indicate a contrasting relationship.
Oh. Okay.
Contrasting. That means the new sentence and the old sentence go against each other.
Yeah.
For example, dolphins are descended from land-dwelling animals. Still, they can only survive in water. What we see here is a contrast. Despite them descending, that means that their common ancestor lived on land, they can only live in the water.
Yeah.
Many people think of dolphins as fish. Meanwhile, they ignore scientific research, which long ago established that dolphins are actually mammals.
Yeah.
So, again, we have a contrast here. Fish versus mammals.
Yeah.
These are going to be two different things. Now, if you had to make a choice between however and still, I would go with however.
Yeah.
If you had to make a choice between however and alternatively, I would go with however. And between still and in contrast, I would go with still.
Oh, okay.
This will never change, regardless.
But what does like alternative, like, its original form? What is
Alternatively is like however. It carries the same meaning, but however fits better.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question here about which transition to use. Although T.S. Eliot devoted several years to writing the novel The Wasteland, it sold only about 330 copies in the 6 months following its publication in 1922. Blank, Eliot was forced to seek other sources of income.
Yeah.
In the mid-1920s, he took a job as the director of a new publishing firm called Faber and Faber. So, why did he have to seek another source of income? Because his novel barely sold any copy.
Oh, yeah.
For a novel to sell only this many copies is actually a very bad thing.
Yeah.
So as a result of the novel only selling this many copies, which means consequently he had to get a new job.
It means like, is it like cause and effect?
Cause and effect. Consequently, yes. Okay. More transitions. However, therefore, moreover, thus, consequently, and also nevertheless. So, these are called conjecture adverbs, which basically means if you were to place them in the middle of the sentence, you must confine them between two commas.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there should be two commas. Yeah.
If they're placed in the middle of the sentence. But if you were to place them at the end of the sentence as the last word in the sentence, you must follow them. You must precede them by a comma.
What do you what's proceed? Like,
Comes before it.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So what? But wait, in the above, like, in the above choice.
Let's say, for example, here, however,
Yeah.
comma again. That's if it's in the middle. But let's say if it's at the end, comma, however.
But I've seen some examples like there's no comma here. There's like a dot, and then after that, however would start the sentence.
However can never start a sentence. Actually, wait, sorry. I take that back. It's possible. Yes, you're right. Beginning of the sentence.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Or middle or end.
Yeah.
So you could have it, for example, here. You could have it in the middle between two commas or in the end preceded by one comma.
Wait, how does the last one make sense?
Okay.
Like,
Healthy Arctic marine mammals have a thick layer of fat beneath their skin. Tropical marine mammals have very few fat reserves. So there's going to be a contrast between the thick layer of fat and the very few fat reserves.
oh, okay.
Opposition, or essentially a contrast.
Yeah.
So, let's see the incorrect use of however on here. Okay, let's see what's going on here. So here, what's happening is there's a mistake. Why? Because look, the tomato is often treated as a vegetable, which is this one here. We call that an independent clause. Do you know what that means?
Yeah.
It's a sentence that makes a perfect sense.
Yeah.
Independent clause. Okay. Now, you must not end a perfect sentence with a comma. You must instead use a period or a semicolon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So here, using a comma followed by however is not going to work.
Yeah.
But if you want to end it, you must use a period or a semicolon possibly.
If I use a semicolon, would that make the H uppercase?
No.
So we keep it lowercase.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. You cannot have any semicolon before however if however is preceded by a comma. That means followed by a comma.
Oh.
So with an ing verb, which we call gerund. So, for example, this is wrong. This is wrong.
Oh, okay, yeah. And what should we do? We should add a...
Just don't, like, if this is an option, don't choose it. You cannot follow a however with a gerund, which is ing, if there is before the however a semicolon. Whereas versus although. So, again, it's going to be a type of a contrast, both of which are used for what? For contrast. For example, salmon is a type of fish, whereas dolphin is a type of mammal.
Yeah.
Okay?
So this works.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a contrast.
Oh,
Okay?
Yeah.
Great. Specifically is used to continue a sentence, so to give a supporting detail for that sentence, or let's say to give an example of that sentence. Okay? Here we have, despite the sub-zero temperatures, high winds, and extreme dryness that characterize the Antarctic interior, a small number of hardy species dwell there. Okay, so what's an example of these hardy species that dwell there? You see, that's called an example, which means you have to use specifically. Because we have mosses, lichens, and also microscopic protozoa.
Should be okay.
Okay, we have more stuff here. Consequently, accordingly, therefore, as a result. They're all there to explain the result of the event in a previous sentence. Okay? For example, saying that dolphins are highly social creatures, as a result of them being highly social creatures, they tend to live in pods of up to a dozen animals. Or that dolphins are highly social creatures, accordingly, so as a result of that, they live in pods of up. The same thing, right? Okay. Subsequently, or afterwards, it means following up on an event, trying to fix the event. So, in the 1980s, dolphin populations began to decline because too many animals were caught in fishing nets. We have an issue here, right?
Yeah.
So, to fix this issue, which means subsequently, fishing companies began taking steps to reassure customers that products were dolphin safe.
Oh,
Okay?
so it's okay. But can we also use like as a result it still works, doesn't it? Or like
I'm just teaching you how specific words are used because we don't use subsequently in everyday life. So in the exam, if it does come, that's what it means.
Okay.
In fact, or indeed, they're used to emphasize a preceding statement or express a similar idea to that previous statement by adding details about it. Okay?
Yeah.
They can be used after a period or after a semicolon only. You can only use them after a period or after a semicolon.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. More stuff. Moreover. Furthermore. In addition. Likewise. Similarly. They're all used to do what? To introduce a new supporting idea.
Okay. Additionally, it also works, right?
Yeah, you're right. We can also add additionally. Okay, that is used to introduce a definition or an explanation. It must come most often after a dash. That's a dash. And you must also follow it with a comma. Just like here, after a dash, followed by a comma.
Oh.
The fact that you must not have punctuation before it or after it. Meaning, don't put commas before it or after it or any semicolon or any period. It has to be sitting somewhere in the sentence without any punctuation surrounding it.
Yeah.
Of and so. You must not follow them with a colon. You must not follow them. What's a colon?
Colon is the.
This is a colon.
Yeah.
Like you cannot say of colon.
Yeah.
Wrong. You cannot say and colon. You cannot say so colon. All wrong.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
In the process, you must place this phrase between two commas. Between two commas.
Yeah.
Okay. So there was something called independent clause, which means a perfect sentence that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But how about dependent clause? It doesn't make sense on its own. It's like a fragmented sentence.
Yeah.
It mostly starts with the following conjunctional words. Something like an after or a because. Or as, although, even if, even though, in order to, since, unless, until, when, whether, while.
So it starts with these.
Mostly starts with these.
Okay.
Yes, mostly starts with these. Now there's something called an introductory clause, which is a dependent clause, but with an additional function, which is to give you some background information.
So is it like it can't stand alone?
No, that's why it's called dependent. It needs help, right? But it can set up the sentence for the independent clause to come afterwards.
Okay.
And you must start with one of the following adverbs to qualify as an introductory clause. After, although, as, because, before, if, since, though, until, when.
Yeah.
You must follow this clause with a comma. For example, because we arrived late, see?
Yeah.
Starting with because, comma, we missed the train.
Yeah.
Okay. Period and semicolon. A period means a dot, a semicolon means this.
Yeah.
So, periods and semicolons can be used to separate two independent clauses.
Yeah.
They can physically separate them. For example, here we have this perfect sentence. Tomatoes are used in many different types of cooking. Perfect sentence, right? Put a period.
Yeah.
Close the sentence. Followed by a new sentence. Farmers around the world grow them in both fields and greenhouses.
Isn't this but like
So if you plan on separating two independent clauses from each other, you must either use a period or a semicolon.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the second sentence, how does it make sense? I think it's dependent.
Okay, let's look at it. Farmers is the subject, right?
Yeah.
Grow is the verb. Who is the object? Them. Them is who? Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Perfect sentence.
Oh yeah.
Tomatoes are used in different types of cooking. If you wish not to use a period, you must use a semicolon.
Oh.
Point 2. You can follow a period with an ing verb, which means gerund, if the sentence containing the ing verb has a comma in it. Okay, so for example, period,
Yeah.
examining, and you continue, and there's a comma somewhere, that's okay. That's okay.
Oh, okay.
Semicolon, alone. If you see a sentence containing a verb that is preceded by a semicolon, let's say for example, semicolon, takes, okay? Then the verb before that verb must also be preceded by a semicolon. Let's say here, here's, you must also put before it a semicolon. And they must be of the same tense. Let's say right now they're both present tense.
Yeah.
Okay. Point 2. A semicolon can be used to talk about separate items of a list and to also separate such items from each other. If there is one semicolon in the list, you must have at least one more semicolon. That means if you're building a list of items, you must have 2 semicolons at least.
Oh, okay.
But more than one, basically. Okay. And if you have 3 items or more, don't use semicolon.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, here, you see, here we have how many items? 1, 2, 3, 4. You must not put semicolon before them to be incorrect. Instead, you must put a colon.
Yeah.
Colon. All right, so
Maybe we did, but I wasn't. He was teaching the upper grades, like high school.
maybe.
Yeah.
You see, before a list of 4 items or more, don't put semicolon, put a colon.
Yeah.
You can also use a semicolon to to connect 2 independent clauses. We arrived late, Perfect sentence.
Yeah.
You missed the train. Perfect sentence. Don't put a semicolon with words like and or but
Oh.
that join two independent clauses. For example, Mary ate dinner. Semicolon but would be wrong.
Yeah.
Instead, Mary ate dinner, but. Okay, so remove the semicolon. It's much better. Okay. But and. You cannot use but in the same sentence that starts with while. You cannot.
Only while.
That's just the rule. Like maybe other things, but while is the most common one.
Yeah.
So while, what a coincidence, right? Many video game creators strive to make their graphics ever more. Since there's while, you will not use but, would you?
No. You won't.
What's the answer?
Sorry. Let me get it. I think it's C.
Smart. Also, it's okay to start a sentence with also. It's okay. Non-essential clause versus essential clause. Non-essential means a sentence that if you were to remove it, the rest of the sentence would make perfect sense.
Oh.
Okay?
Oh, yeah,
Well-
it's like extra information.
Yeah. So, for example, you say, I was going to the mosque and I saw a bird and I arrived at 12 p.m. Did someone have to know that you saw a bird?
No.
No one. So if you remove that sentence, I think no one's going to get hurt, even the bird, right? For example,
Yeah.
oh yeah, by the way, non-essential clause must be contained by 2 commas, by 2 dashes, or by 2 parentheses to designate
Oh.
that it's non-essential clause.
Yeah.
And possibly is followed by a verb. Most likely, actually. The tomato grows in many shapes and varieties. Do we have to know that tomato is a popular salad dressing?
No.
Michael Jackson died in 2008. He died regardless whether he was a good singer or not.
Yeah.
My brothers are visiting, I think it's Vietnam probably.
Yeah.
Right. Their names, no one could care less. All right. Never use 2 commas to surround an essential clause. Never. Okay?
Yeah.
So, the woman who interviewed you is my sister. That's correct. Why? Because who interviewed you is basically essential clause, right?
Yeah.
And don't put commas around it. Students, if you just say students only harm themselves,
Sorry.
you're missing a detail. Which students? Students who stay up late at night. So this detail is gonna make it an essential clause. That means you have to keep it. You must not put it between 2 commas ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
They start with like these.
Like for example, if you tell someone, the person asked for my identity, they will start by saying who. So guess who? The person. Is it the FBI?
Yeah.
Is it I don't know who? It's the person checking tickets at the counter.
Yeah.
This movie is a great international production, but what movie?
Kingdom of Heaven.
That's called essential clause. The successful singer died in 2008, but who again? Michael Jackson. Fanboys conjunction. They love those. So fanboys are how many letters here?
3.
7, right? How'd you count that? Okay.
Oh yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Please memorize them.
Oh, I've always,
For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so.
I've always wondered why they call them fanboys. I
Alright,
just realized.
that's cool. If a fanboy is used to connect two independent clauses, you must put before it a comma.
Oh, okay.
We arrived late, comma, so. The teacher speaks, comma, and.
Yeah.
You should not place a fanboy after a period. You must not. Okay?
So it's long.
Hmm?
So like it can be. Oh.
Like, don't put any of these after a period. So, like, don't start with and.
Oh.
Don't start with but. Don't start with or. Don't.
Yeah.
Okay? Maybe you do in texting, but that doesn't make it right.
Yeah, I've done an essays.
Okay. So here. Tomatoes are used in many different types of cooking. You see, that was a perfect sentence, independent clause. You use and without a comma before it?
We could use it.
You cannot. Because you're connecting two perfect sentences with a fanboy without a comma.
Oh.
That's not allowed. Not good. Instead, you have to use a comma, then a fanboy. You cannot use a fanboy after a period. Won't be okay for you. You cannot use semicolon, then a fanboy.
Yeah.
Not okay either. Okay. Now, we said if you want to use a fanboy, you must use a comma, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. But that's only correct if what's following the fanboy is referring to, so look, let's just look at the previous example. So here, tomatoes, they. Tomatoes what? They. So you must put a comma. Tomatoes, they.
Cool.
You must put a comma, right? Tomatoes, they. You must put a comma. Just here.
Yeah.
But look at this one. Tomatoes, is there a they here?
No.
No. There's no they next to the and. So in this case, you must not use a comma.
But like R still refers to tomatoes.
But now this is becoming dependent clause, not independent.
Oh.
Because where is your pronoun? So now if you want to connect independent clause, independent, with a dependent, you can use a fanboy, but without any commas. Okay?
Yeah.
That's how you connect independent with a dependent.
Yeah.
So a fanboy, but no comma before it.
Yeah.
Essentially, a semicolon is the same thing as a period when you want to connect two independent clauses. This is to connect two independent clauses.
Yeah.
So you must never connect two independent clauses with a comma. It's not going to work. So if you want to say we arrived late, comma, we missed the train, very wrong. Instead, use a comma and a fanboy, or use a semicolon, or use a period. Okay?
Yeah.
So, you can obviously also put a period here. Okay?
Yeah.
And of course, like we already mentioned, you can surround non-essential clause with two commas.
Sure.
Okay. And if you want to connect an independent clause with independent, this one is dependent.
Yeah.
This one is independent. You can use a comma.
True.
Yes, you could.
We could also like flip, like
Yeah.
change the places,
Yeah.
right?
But you can never use a comma to connect to independence. You can connect dependent with independent by a comma. That's okay. You see here?
Isn't this the same example?
Yeah, but this is now talking about something else. So because the sentence starts with while, it
Makes it
becomes
dependent.
dependent clause.
Yeah.
Others look to that's independent. To connect them, you must have a comma. You must. Has to be C.
But like, isn't it supposed the comma shouldn't be before the lifelike?
Why? Evermore, lifelike, comma, and then because look here, others is the subject. Look
Yeah.
is the verb.
Verb.
To the past is the object, right?
What does lifelike mean?
Like they're alive in a way.
Oh.
Okay. A comma should not be used to separate two verbs. So if you say I cleaned, comma, and painted, wrong. And instead remove the comma. If you say Mary ate dinner and returned, wrong. Instead remove the comma.
Yeah.
To connect two verbs, there must be no comma. Don't put commas after the following: but, and, such as, like. Don't. Okay?
So like, but such as it would work.
You can never put a comma here.
I've seen somewhere though.
Can you show me? Is it an Instagram comment? That's not correct English. I mean, this is not correct English, is it? You guys love it. Love it. Okay. So don't put commas after these. It's gonna be wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mary eats foods such as, this would be incorrect because she, after such as, and you put, a comma. Not so cool, is it?
Yeah.
Not so cool.
Oh wait, could we put a semicolon here?
Such as,
Or a colon?
no. After such as, you must not put any punctuation. We'll go over that today, but you must not put any punctuation. An 18-year-old in California, comma is not okay. Don't separate the subject from the verb with a comma.
Yeah.
Right? Because the 18-year-old is the subject, is the verb.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. See, the attribute is the subject and the verb is. Don't put a comma there. It's incorrect. Don't use commas to indicate indirect quotations that begin with that or which. For example, if you say, Ivan used to say, right, now it's like a quotation, right? You cannot use commas.
Yeah.
You cannot. Okay. So why? Because if they begin with that or which, you must not. Because this is a quotation. Ivan said what? That he learned to cook before he learned to walk.
Yeah.
You must have just removed that comma to make it correct instead. Okay. If a person or some other subject is being introduced in the sentence with a title or a job title, and then his, her, or its name follows, don't put commas before or after the name. For example, the singer, that is the title.
Yeah.
Right? So title is first. then the name, don't put a comma on the name. Don't.
True.
But if the name of the person comes first, then title, then yes, you can separate them by a comma. Because now the successful singer becomes your non-essential clause. Can be removed. Okay. If the name is being followed by a verb, the name of a film or a novel or a book, okay, or even a person, don't put punctuation. So you see Michael Jackson died. Don't separate the subject from the verb. Okay. Which. Relative clauses like which are used for extra information, and a comma is needed to precede it, to come before it. For example, David wants to go to the beach. Now we're going to be discussing the beach, right? Given some extra information about the beach, you must use which with a comma before which. While. If there's a choice between while in the beginning versus the middle of the sentence, always go for the beginning. It fits there better. Of course, you can always put while in the middle of the sentence as long as you precede it by a comma. And the sentence that comes after a while must end with a period. No more commas.
So like, wait, can you repeat?
So like, if you want to put while somewhere in the middle of the sentence, you must first precede it by a comma. Second, you must end with a period.
No.
Yeah. Rather, if it is being preceded by a verb or a noun, you must separate from them by using a semicolon. Okay?
So it's if it's preceded by a clause?
By a clause, like a verb or a noun, yes. Such as like or including. Don't put any punctuation after them. So it would be incorrect to say like with a colon. Would be incorrect. And instead just put no punctuation. It would be incorrect to put a comma after such as, put nothing after such as. Colon and single dash, both of which can be used to present you a list or to provide some extra information for the previous sentence by, giving you more explanation. But never use a colon to introduce items when those items are part of the sentence. For example, the bookstore specializes in, we're trying to say in what, and you put a colon, very wrong. But let's say I'll be tested in 3 subjects. So now the question that comes to mind, what are they? You put a colon.
Yeah.
The bookstore specializes in art, architecture. See, don't cut specializes in with a colon. That would ruin the meaning of the sentence.
True.
Don't put the after a colon. Don't. So having a colon followed by the would be wrong. Don't follow a colon by a verb unless it's in the ing format, like gerund format. A single dash can be used to deliberately, which means intentionally, interrupt a statement or to create a dramatic pause or sense of suspense, like, oh, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
In this case, either a sentence or a fragment of a sentence can follow that dash. For example, universities have historically offered a wide variety of continuing education classes. Dash. That means what follows is most likely for the purpose of creating a mystery. but the ways in which those classes are offered is rapidly changing. Only a few minerals are found in most places, but large concentrations of the rocks collect in a few locations, like Russia's Kola Peninsula, for example. Okay. Don't use colons after prepositions of in
Yeah.
that begin a prepositional phrase with multiple objects. So, my new house consisted of, right? This is wrong. You're not supposed to put a colon after of. You're not supposed to. Don't use a colon after verbs that become before a list of items. So contains, then colon, wrong. Because what's following contains the list of the items. So instead, remove the colon. For example, and on the other hand, you must precede and proceed those phrases by a comma if they are to be mentioned in the middle of the sentence. So before and after. Before, after. Before, after. Because. You can start a sentence with because, but you must have a comma in the middle of that sentence.
Wait, sometimes can we have like because in the middle but without any commas?
Yeah, of course.
Oh.
Such is not the same thing as such as. Such must be preceded by a period or a semicolon. Like this, or like this.
Yeah.
Verb plus whenever, whoever, whatever. If there is a verb and any of the following words, don't separate them by any comma. Don't. I play whenever. I will see whoever. And. You cannot use and in a sentence that has however in the middle of it.
Oh.
It won't work. You can, of course, put a comma before and if the sentence before and is a perfect sentence. And then that follows it is a perfect sentence as well, right? Okay. Yeah, like we talked about that before, I think.
Yeah.
So like it's okay to have independent, then comma, then and then one more independent, as long as the second independent has a pronoun, like he or she or they or something like that.
Yeah.
When, what, where, do not precede them by a comma. Do not.
Oh, okay.
Some of it versus some of which. Some of which is the better fit. Subject plus verb, don't separate them from each other by a comma or a semicolon or anything. Okay?
Yeah.
So by any punctuation. And the fact that if you see this phrase in the middle of the sentence, don't place it within commas. Just leave it without commas. Okay?
Yeah.